Blackhawks beat the Ducks 2-1 in overtime for their third win in their last 4 games, while Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis keep on rolling in Rockford.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman, also Blackhawks beat writer for Chicago Hockey Now. Quick heads up that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Go and download the FanDuel app now, or you can simply check out FanDuel.com to get $300 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, happy Victory Monday, Blackhawks fans, and it's yet another double Victory Monday here, which is always extra sweet, as both the Blackhawks and the Bears earned wins yesterday at home to keep their nice stretches going. Ben Johnson's group has now rattled off 4 consecutive victories, while Jeff Blashill's team has won 3 of their last 4 and now earned points in 5 of their past 6 contests, following last night's 2-1 OT win against the Anaheim Ducks. And I'll get into this game here in just a second, Blackhawks fans, but first and foremost, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much to everyone for the incredible support that I've received over the last week following the passing of my grandfather. I had so many different people reach out through the YouTube comment section or send me a text, share their words of support on social media, whatever it may have been, and that truly means the world to me, Blackhawks fans. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. So thankful for all of the support in one of the most difficult periods of my entire life, and serves as just yet another reminder of why Blackhawks fans are the best fans in the entire world. But yeah, it's been a tough stretch for me over the last 5, 6, 7 days. I also mentioned on the last show that I dropped on Friday that I had a wedding in Wisconsin on Saturday that I was a groomsman for. So between 2 Blackhawks games on Friday night and at 6 p.m. Central Time yesterday, had to travel to and from Wisconsin and be part of the wedding, which was a lot of fun. Nice to kind of get my mind off of things. But because of all the life stuff that I've been going through, haven't been able to talk yet on the show about the Blackhawks 3-2 shootout loss to the Vancouver Canucks on Friday. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because obviously it's not fresh any longer, but there were a couple of quick takeaways that I wanted to get into from that game, with the first one being, I have no clue how Tyler Bertuzzi didn't have a 2-goal game. I mean, genuinely, no idea how the officials, after review, can come to the conclusion that there was definitely goaltender interference on that play. And I don't think by any means Bertuzzi's desire was, or what he was trying to do was knock Blackhawks legend Kevin Lankinen's pad across the goal line. No, he just saw the loose puck that was laying there right next to the line, just had a natural reaction of going and trying to whack that bad boy in, caught some pad along the way, but I really don't understand how they came to that conclusion that there was no goal there. And I thought Bertuzzi got absolutely robbed of his second goal of the game and a really impressive showing from him otherwise. However, I think the other key takeaway from this loss is that the Blackhawks let Vancouver off of the ropes in the second period, because in the opening 20 minutes, the Hawks were in control. They were building off of their incredible 8-3 win over the St. Louis Blues in their last time out at that time. And with the way that they kept pushing in St. Louis from start to finish in that game, I was hoping they were going to do the exact same thing on Friday night against Vancouver. They grabbed a 2-0 advantage early. Andre Burakovsky found Ryan Donato backdoor. Then Bertuzzi scored what wound up being his only goal of the game. And the Hawks just had the Vancouver Canucks sure looked like a team that was on the back end of a road back-to-back in that one. But the Blackhawks let a major opportunity slip out of their grasp in that second period. Were plagued by some penalty troubles once again, which continues to be a major issue for this team. And that allowed Jake DeBrusk to go in, cut the Hawks lead in half on the power play, cleaning up the loose change and giving the road team some momentum there. And then just 7 minutes later, Max Sasson, after kind of a sloppy play along the boards by the Blackhawks, I think too many players got overly committed to that side of the ice. That gave Philip Roenick and Sasson a pretty easy 2-on-1 connection. Sasson buried the puck into the open net to tie the game up 2-2, just like that. All the good work the Blackhawks had done early on in the game was gone in the blink of an eye, and that was what the score would remain all the way up until overtime. But again, while Bertuzzi probably should have been credited with the game-winning goal, I don't think the Blackhawks should have even found themselves in that situation if they continued to execute in the second period like they did in the first. And in the end, ends up being a 3-2 shootout loss for the Hawks, as Kevin Lankinen, who really did not look comfortable whatsoever in the early portion of this game. He was fighting literally like every single shot the Blackhawks were putting on net. But somehow, some way, when the game mattered the most, he came up the biggest for the Canucks, stopped all 4 Blackhawks shooters in the shootout. That set up Brock Besser in round 4 after Spencer Knight denied the Canucks' first 3 shooters. Besser finally beats him, and that gives the Canucks the 3-2 win and also their 11th consecutive victory against the Blackhawks. This was one the Hawks should have had 2 points out of, and one they should have finally put an end to their seemingly everlasting losing streak to Vancouver. Major opportunity that they let slip out of their grasp on Friday night, but fortunately they fared a whole lot better in extra time on Sunday, and I'll break down all the key takeaways and stats from last night's win over the Anaheim Ducks in just a moment. But first, I do got to talk to you all about Monarch. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. But that's why there is Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, super easy-to-use interface, both available on your laptop and on your phone. And Monarch does all of the heavy lifting for you so that you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks any longer. Go and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarch.com, and you'll also get half off on your first year. Again, that's 50% off on your first year at monarch.com when you use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Just a quick reminder, Blackhawks fans, if you haven't done so already, to please go and smash that like button. Subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. And if you're tuning in through an audio platform, would love if you could rate and review the podcast, preferably with a 5-star rating. Those always put a big smile on my face. And thank you all again for the incredible support that you always offer. Segment 2 on today's show. Second game of the weekend for the Blackhawks came last night against the Anaheim Ducks as Joel Quenneville, you all remember him, right? Returned to the United Center for the first time since being reinstated by the NHL, joined on with the Ducks this past summer after being out of the league since the 2020-2021 season when he was still with the Florida Panthers, and of course had to resign after being named in the Kyle Beach scandal and failing to provide a proper response to that entire situation. Before I get into the game itself, do want to mention that Jason Dickinson was banged up once again in Friday's loss to the Canucks. He also missed the home opener the weekend prior against the Montreal Canadiens, was out for the second time in the opening 7 games of the season while just kind of dealing with a little bit of a nagging injury. And that led to some different forward line combinations than we've seen through the opening 6 games of the season. Bertuzzi, Bedard, and Burakovsky served as the top line, and they were actually put together as a trio on Friday because Blashill, I think, recognized that Bertuzzi was on his A game, probably the best Blackhawks player in that contest. And I also want to give him credit for not only finding the back of the net, not only leading the Blackhawks with 6 shots on goal and chipping in for 3 hits, but he also won 7 of 9 faceoffs. And I know the Blackhawks have, over the years, with all of their face-off struggles, they've given some wingers more of an opportunity to have a go at the dot. Tyler Bertuzzi has not been consistently one of those guys, but apparently Blashill felt he was capable of doing anything in that game on Friday night. So credit to Bertuzzi for having an incredible performance in so many different ways that probably should have been capped off by his second goal of the night and the game winner there in the third period. But definitely understood why Blashill kept this trio together once again last night against the Ducks. That decision paid off, as I'll get to here in just a second. Teuvo Teravainen and Frank Nazar remained with one another, but replacing Bertuzzi on that second line was Ilya Mikheyev, who actually was given the worst game score on X I saw from the game score impact charts that I always retweet. And that kind of surprised me because I thought Mikheyev was buzzing around and using his wheels well in a couple of different ways. Not that the Teravainen, Nazar, Mikheyev trio really did all that much together at even strength, but I didn't think Mikheyev by any means was the worst Blackhawk on the ice last night. Colton Dach and Ryan Donato were on the third line with Ryan Green stepping into Jason Dickinson's role since he was out. And then Landon Slaggert finally was healthy enough to make his season debut. He skated down on the fourth line along with Lucas Reichel as the Blackhawks utilized an 11 forward, 7 defenseman lineup once again. But as I just mentioned, the top line of Burt, Bedard, and Burakovsky led the way all night for Chicago. They were easily their most effective trio at even strength. And it was Connor Bedard who was the driving force behind that. It was seriously one of the most active games I've ever seen out of Bedard in terms of like every time he touched the puck, something happened. And he just had that aggressive mentality from the jump. 9 shots on goal from Bedard in this game, which is a new career high, had 11 shot attempts. His only point actually ended up being a primary assist on Ryan Donato's overtime winner. He saved his best play for last, but he definitely could have had a 3 or 4 point game. And I don't know what it is. Maybe he just gets that extra juice going up against 2023 number 2 overall pick Leo Carlsson, who was selected right after him by Anaheim. But for whatever reason, Bedard always brings it whenever he's facing off with Anaheim. He had 11 points in 6 career games against the Ducks entering this one, and definitely could have had a 2 or 3 point night had it not been for Lucas Dostal making some incredible saves in goal for the Ducks. But really noticeable game out of Connor Bedard. He continues to look like the real deal and show such notable strides in his game here during his 3rd year in the NHL. He looks faster. He looks more aggressive. He's feisty. He's not backing down from anyone. And we're seeing him make some better defensive plays and being, I think, a little bit more responsible on that side of the game as well, which is definitely crucial for him if he wants to be a legitimate center iceman at this level. But love to see Bedard find a way on the stat sheet and would not be denied in overtime. 2-on-1 rush with Ryan Donato, calling his own number, which I love to see. He was feeling it, so I understood why he shot that puck. Good save by Dostal, but an even better job by Bedard to stick with the play, wind up corralling that loose puck, battling along with a couple of Ducks defenders behind the net, and then setting up Donato for an easy tap in out in front for the overtime winner. Awesome job by Connor Bedard. And like I said, one of the most active games I've seen from him in the NHL. He now has 7 points through his opening 7 games, looking real savvy. And speaking of young players who have been impressive, got to talk about Spencer Knight, Blackhawks fans. Oh my goodness. I don't even know if we've just found our new number 1 goalie of the future. We might have found an elite one at that, because Spencer Knight, what a start to the season it has been from this kid. Yet another spectacular showing. He's 5 for 5 on those here this season, and he stopped 38 of 39 shots last night against the Ducks. Was really savvy, particularly in that second period, which kind of similarly to the game on Friday, didn't really go all that well for the Blackhawks, but he held up his end of the bargain once again. The only shot that ended up beating him came on a 6-4 advantage for the Ducks late in the game. Again, an ill-advised penalty by Wyatt Kaiser. Obviously, it was incidental. He didn't mean to clear the puck over the glass in the D zone and get that delay of game penalty, but still something you cannot do in the closing moments of the game. That gave the Ducks a 2-player advantage there in the final minute. Mason McTavish roofs a shot over Spencer Knight's left shoulder through a screen that evened up the score 1-1. But that was his only blemish on the night. And almost like Bedard, he just continues to have the Anaheim Ducks number. Entering this game, he was 3-0-0 in 3 career starts against the Ducks with a 1.00 goals against average and 2 shutouts. And he dang near almost picked up a 3rd in his 100th career NHL game. Would have loved for the Blackhawks to not have needed overtime for this one. But still, Spencer Knight just continues to show the incredible upside that he possesses while still only being 24 years old. And what really impresses me too about Spencer Knight, one of the funniest interviews I've learned in the Blackhawks dressing room. He is very soft-spoken, speaks his mind, and is just a very interesting guy altogether, which goaltenders always seem to be, right? But how about the numbers for Knight now? Through his first 5 NHL games this season, 2-2-1 record with a 1.96 goals against average and 937 save percentage. He has been a huge difference maker in between the pipes for Chicago, and a main reason why they are now off to this 3-2-2 start. He moves to 4-0-0 against the Ducks in his career. Would have loved for him to get the shutout in his 100th NHL game, but knowing the type of guy that Spencer is and how he reacted when we asked him about his 100th NHL game following it, he just cares about getting the victory. And I'm glad the Blackhawks could get him one in this game because he definitely deserved it. Frank Nazar, got to give a shout out to my guy, Frank the Tank. He opened up the scoring for the Blackhawks. Would have loved for him to end up with the game-winning goal. That now gives him 7 points through his opening 7 games, and he and Bedard just establishing a legit 1-2 punch down the middle has been so big for this Blackhawks team. And on this goal from Nazar, I think you got to see a little bit of everything in terms of what makes him so special. You got to see the hustle and the constant effort that he gives you whenever he's out there on the ice. Gets knocked down by a Ducks player at Anaheim's blue line. He gets up first and jumps up into the play immediately. Then we also get to see the skill and the play recognition. 2 very savvy passes by Nazar on that sequence. The second one giving Wyatt Kaiser the one-timer that rang off the post, but Nazar goes to the dirty areas, goes to the right spots, isn't afraid of crashing the net, and winds up putting home the rebound for his 3rd goal of the season. That put the Blackhawks ahead 1-0 at the time. I don't think Nazar has had his best stuff in each of these last 2 games for the Blackhawks, but I love how he continues to make impactful plays when the game is on the line. And I also love the sellies we always seem to get from Nazar. Awesome picture shared by NHL on social media that I posted on my Talkin' Hockey X account. Make sure to go and take a look at it if you haven't done so already. But Bedard, Nazar, Spencer Knight, 3 crucial young players of this Blackhawks rebuild were at the forefront of the team's 2-1 OT win yesterday at the United Center. But I also got to give a shout out to one of the Grizzly veterans on the squad, and that's Mr. Ryan Donato, who kind of had a little bit of a slow start through the opening 2-3 games, but has definitely looked like the guy who potted 30 goals and tallied 60 points last season more and more over the last week or so. He was the only Blackhawks player in this game to pick up 2 points on the night. Didn't let, a little bit of a change in the lineup. Dickinson being out, who he had played with the last handful of games. Ilya Mikheyev getting a bump up in the lineup. He didn't let that slow him down whatsoever. Overtime goal. Also gets the secondary assist on Frank Nazar's tally. That now extends his point streak to 4 games. He's now found the back of the net in 3 games in a row and has 5 points total during his 4-game point streak. Really impressed with the response from Ryan Donato. Like I said, after a little bit of a slow start, he's been very effective once again for the Blackhawks, and that's definitely been huge for their offense and getting some more depth scoring behind guys like Connor Bedard and Frankie Nazar. And just in general, how about these young and scrappy Blackhawks? I've been singing their praises heading into the season. I talked about how this was going to be a more fun group and how they had a higher upside than they've had in quite some time. But even I didn't expect the Blackhawks to get off to the start that they have. Now 3-2-2 through their opening 7 games. They have points, like I said, off the jump in 5 of their last 6 now. And I think maybe an even bigger stat is that they've either been tied or had the lead going into the 3rd period in every single night. The competitiveness from this young group has just been so gosh darn impressive. And that's, with a new head coach that they're not all that familiar with. That's, implementing some new systems on the penalty kill, and the top power play unit hasn't been all that great. The Blackhawks have been the most penalized team in the NHL, yet despite all that, they're consistent on a nightly basis. And oh my gosh, that in and alone of itself just makes me so happy because there are so many, in a similar fashion to the Chicago Bears and the wins that they've had over these last few games. Yes, the Blackhawks lost on Friday night to Vancouver, but The game they had last night against Anaheim, it just feels like in years past, that's a game the Blackhawks would have lost. And they don't go on these runs where they win 3 out of 4, or pick up a point in 5 out of 6. The strides that are already being made so early in the season with a lot of new faces, a lot of unfamiliarity going on, it's undoubtedly impressive. And again, just showcases how bright the future is for the Chicago Blackhawks. And you want to know what's even more exciting? There's going to be more and more help on the way. The hope is that, obviously Nazar, Bedard, these young players, Rinzel, are going to continue to grow as the season progresses. And I really do believe that's going to be the case with more experience and more time to establish chemistry with one another, that they're going to start firing. And I've talked about how in the past I've said, going into this season, I expect the Blackhawks to finish the year on a much higher note than they started. Well, they're already off to a better start than I originally anticipated, but there's going to be more help coming these next couple of years. Anton Frondel, who's been on an incredible run in the SHL as an 18-year-old against grown men. Roman Kanserov is tied for the KHL lead in goals with 10 through his opening 17 games and is a top 10 point scorer in that league. Sasha Boisvert, playing for one of the top programs in the country for Boston University as their top line center. We could potentially see, depending on how their seasons go, all of them at the end of this 25-26 campaign, but at the very least, all are expected to come and join the Blackhawks organization for the 26-27 campaign. And then there's also 2 players who have been balling out early in the season down with the Rockford IceHogs, and Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis. There is so much talent, so much young talent in this Blackhawks organization, and it's going to be so much fun watching them all come to the forefront with one another. But speaking of Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis, before I wrap up today's episode, got to talk about those 2 kids making a huge impact for the IceHogs early on in the season as well. But first, I do got to talk to you all about another one of today's sponsors, which is FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for every kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Because right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. And what I personally love about FanDuel is that it's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. With player props, same-game parlays, and more ways than ever to now get in on the action, are you ready to play? All you got to do is download the FanDuel app now or visit FanDuel.com today in order to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get $300 worth of bonus bets when it wins. Segment 3, before I wrap up today's episode, how about a 3-game weekend for the Rockford IceHogs as they were in action on Friday night, on Saturday, and on Sunday afternoon, as that's life down in the AHL. And not only have the kids been thriving up in the NHL for the Blackhawks, they've been doing it down in the AHL for the IceHogs as well. First, starting with Oliver Moore, who I talked about on the show early last week, had a 2-goal performance to lift the IceHogs to a 6-2 win over the Iowa Wild, potting his first 2 career professional goals. Well, Moore had yet another 2-goal showing in his following contest on Friday night against the Texas Stars, responsible for both tallies on the evening for the IceHogs and giving him 4 goals through his opening 3 games. Then on Saturday, we saw Nick Lardis finally join in on the goal scoring party, something, he did 71 times last year in the OHL, found the back of the net for the first time as a pro with the IceHogs on Saturday, set up by Oliver Moore as well. And then Dominic Toninato, not a young prospect, but want to give a shout out to Dominic because I thought he did pretty well in the preseason for the Blackhawks. Obviously, just given the team's current situation and how much they want to be playing young players, there's not really an NHL roster spot for Toninato, but he's going to be a key veteran for, guys like Oliver Moore, guys like Nick Lardis, Gavin Hayes, who he fared really well with on the same line in the preseason. He's going to be a huge, vet for them to have around and kind of bounce things off of him and whatnot and show those guys the ropes. And he's been, playing some pretty good hockey in his own right, winds up with the overtime winner to give the IceHogs their second OT win in as many days. Would have loved if the Hawks were able to pick up a pair of overtime wins over the weekend as well. But last night, the IceHogs, while they weren't able to pick up their 3rd win of the weekend, Nick Lardis had his best game so far as a professional, scoring for the second straight contest and also adding 3 assists for a 4-point game. And all 4 points came in the second period. How about that for Nick Lardis? Unfortunately, Rockford fell in their back end of the back-to-back to the Chicago Wolves, 6-5 in overtime in an offensive shootout. But Nick Lardis continues to show that he's getting more and more comfortable, and some of the stuff that he was doing with the Brantford Bulldogs these last few years can be translated against grown men. This now gives Lardis 8 points through his opening 5 AHL games, 2 goals and 6 assists, while Oliver Moore is up over a point per game as well with 6 points, 4 goals, and 2 assists through his opening 5 games. And among all rookie skaters in the AHL, yes, I know we're still very early in the season, but Nick Lardis is number 1 in points, while Oliver Moore is right behind him at number 2. Both of those players off to an impressive start to their first full professional seasons with the IceHogs. I've talked about for Moore, if he keeps this kind of stuff up, because of his two-way play, because the Blackhawks can use him in defensive situations, even I think if Lardis continues to be the one of the two who produces more points, I think Oliver Moore is going to get the call up first, just because there's not really a clear open top 6 spot for the Blackhawks right now. But I will say, if Nick Lardis keeps on producing the way that he is, they're going to do something to create a spot for him. I'm still expecting Moore, again, to be the one who's going to play more NHL games this season, and who even knows if Nick Lardis gets called up whatsoever. The Blackhawks could just allow him to remain with Rockford and really get comfortable there. And there's obviously been no rush on any of their prospects in the past, but an incredible start to the year for both of these guys as they're pushing to make impressions, not only for the Rockford IceHogs team, but for the big league club who's watching what they're doing as well. Really good stuff from both Nick Lardis and Oliver Moore over the weekend. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram if you haven't done so already as well. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2. My Strictly account, though, is at Talkin' Hockey. Go and check it out so you don't miss any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Victory Mondays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.